10 craziest White House moments. Some insane things have happened at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, a place that's home to the President of the United States and host to all sorts of serious political happenings. Has also been the site of seances, ghost sightings, insane inauguration parties that got way out of hand, and some random guy that landed a stolen helicopter on the lawn. Don't believe us? Then stay tuned and maybe you'll learn a thing or two. But first, we'd like to thank Ian Noonan for commenting on our Scary Islands That Humans Refuse to Populate video. We're glad we could help you in your pursuit to be rid of the rest of all of us. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you're still around to see this video. Lincoln ghost sightings. So much surrounding Abraham Lincoln and the story of his death is spooky and hard to believe. Before he was assassinated, he talked about having vivid dreams, first of himself walking through a somber White House that was mourning his passing, and then, in the 3 nights before his shooting, of himself being killed. William H. Crook, Lincoln's bodyguard, mentioned that as Lincoln was leaving to attend Our American Cousin on that infamous night, he said, "Goodbye, Crook," instead of his usual parting, "Good night, Crook." Perhaps it's why many prominent people have sworn throughout the years that they saw his apparition. Winston Churchill claims he saw Lincoln standing by the fireplace of his room as he got out of the bath, naked and smoking a cigar. First Lady Grace Coolidge saw Lincoln in the Yellow Oval Room staring out of a window. Theodore Roosevelt also claimed to have seen the spirit of Honest Abe. So what do you guys think? Are these famous figures just having some fun with the White House myth? Or did they really see the ghost of Abraham Lincoln? Number 9. The Monica Lewinsky scandal. There were several very private moments shared between 2 people in the White House in the mid-1990s. Perhaps it's happened before. Actually, of course it has. There's bedrooms in there. But when those moments go public, one of those people is the President of the United States, and the other isn't the First Lady? Oh yeah, and some of the moments didn't happen in a bed at all. Well, it becomes one of the biggest political scandals not just of the 90s, but of all time. When stories surfaced of Bill Clinton's infidelity with White House intern Monica Lewinsky, it was hard to believe. Clinton himself famously denied having relations with Lewinsky. Eventually, though, the truth came out, which almost lost Clinton his job. Clinton, though, somehow got out of the scandal without losing either his job as president or his wife Hillary, whom he remains married to today. Number 8. Mary Todd's seances. Okay, so back to Lincoln White House stories because they're very interesting. The president's ghost isn't the only Lincoln who is rumored to haunt the halls of America's most famous house. His wife, Mary Todd, and son, Willie, have also been seen on more than one occasion, according to the stories. While the president was off leading the Union in the Civil War, Mary Todd watched helplessly as their 11-year-old son, Willie, slowly succumbed to typhoid fever. Filled with grief following his passing, Mary Todd tried to reach her son in the afterlife. She had several seance circles in the White House Red Room, and, on at least one occasion, Abraham Lincoln himself was present. She claimed that her son's spirit visited her nightly in her White House bedroom. Mary Todd's interest in the spiritual world was further strengthened following her husband's assassination, and she would look to spiritualism as a source of comfort for the rest of her life. Number 7. Andrew Jackson's Inauguration Party. Alright, all that Lincoln ghost stuff is pretty serious. Let's move on to something a little more fun and lighthearted. Like the insane party that supposedly happened at the White House following the swearing in of Andrew Jackson in 1829. It may seem unthinkable today, but it was customary back in those days for the newly inaugurated president to meet people at the White House following their swearing in. It was something like an open house for the people, and anyone who could make it was welcome to show up. Apparently, 61-year-old Andrew Jackson had a lot of supporters who liked to party. People showed up in throngs and filled the White House. The crowds drank in excess, destroyed furniture, and senselessly, according to the tales anyways, dug cheese into the carpets with their boots. These stories may be exaggerated, but the sheer amount of people there seems accurate. It got so out of hand that Jackson had to sneak out of a back door early and go to his hotel. Number 6. Willie Nelson burns one down. It's likely that not many people have done what Willie Nelson was able to accomplish during a trip to the White House. As the story goes, he got a tour of the presidential residence from his friend, who happened to be President Jimmy Carter's son, James Earl Carter III. The tour concluded on the roof, where Carter pulled out a joint and the pair took in the immaculate White House roof view while also puffing on Carter's special little surprise. Number 5. Dallas Cowboys White House. The Dallas Cowboys were no strangers to the White House. Their teams have visited the hallowed landmark several times in the past. Bill Clinton even joked that they must be bored of winning during a visit in the 90s following their 3rd Super Bowl victory in 4 years. Though the players may have some good stories of their visits to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that's not what this is about at all. Those 90s Cowboys had their own White House that they kept secret from the general general public, located behind the canal that is the Cowboys' headquarters in Valley Ranch, Texas. Members of the team, including star wide receiver Michael Irvin, all threw down to buy a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. The players used the pad as a place to bring girls. Neighbors reported seeing all kinds of women come and go and said that they could see girls running around in their birthday suits through the windows. Sure, crazy scandals and meetings have taken place at Washington, D.C.'s White House, but it's doubtful these stories could compare to the tales that some of those 90s Cowboys could share about their own personal White House.
Number 4.
Elvis meets Nixon. Perhaps the only thing more bizarre than this famous picture of Elvis and then President Richard Nixon shaking hands in the White House's Oval Office is the story of how the picture came to be. Presley, who had decided to go to Washington, D.C. out of boredom and on a whim, wanted a badge from the Federal Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, believing that it would give him legal license to enter any country carrying any drugs and weapons he wanted. So he wrote a note and took it to the White House. It reached a White House aide who happened to be an Elvis fan, and he set up a meeting with Nixon. Clad in a purple velvet suit with a huge gold belt buckle, Elvis and Nixon posed for pictures and talked. In the end, hilariously, Elvis got what he came for, his own narc badge.
Number 3.
Mr.T. Santa Claus. Mr.T. and Nancy Reagan had something in common in the early 80s. They were both campaigning hard to get kids to say no to drugs, one as an actor from the new show The A-Team, and the other as the First Lady of the United States. When Reagan heard that Mr. T was going to schools and spreading the say no to drugs message, she decided that he would make the perfect White House Santa Claus. So in 1983, clad in a sleeveless Santa outfit, of course, B.A. Baracus helped White House staffers celebrate the holidays. Reagan even sat on his lap, gave him a peck on the forehead, and received a Mr. T doll in return. What an odd, awesome White House Christmas.
Number 2.
Robert Preston's wild ride. Robert Preston was a 20-year-old Army private in 1974. He had recently been kicked out of helicopter pilot training for reasons he felt were unjust and harbored resentment for not being able to do what he loved. Anchoring a broken heart due to a recently failed relationship and on his way back to base one night in February, he decided his only solace lay in one of the 30 Bell UH-1B helicopters that constantly sat fully fueled at Fort Meade's Tipton Field. Amazingly, he was able to start the craft and take off, only being noticed as he was departing. While he was being reported by field security and multiple people on the ground, Preston headed to nearby Washington, D.C. to get a once-in-a-lifetime view of the nation's capital. Eventually, as he hovered around the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, and the Capitol building, the Maryland State Police summoned their own helicopters. Knowing he would have to give himself up, he decided his best course of action would be to do it directly to President Nixon, who, as it turns out, wasn't even in town. So he headed for the White House lawn, and as he was taking fire from Secret Service agents, landed the craft. Preston would suffer minor bullet wounds and receive 2 months in military prison as well as a general discharge for his insane stunt. The helicopter would remain on the lawn until the next day, during which time it became a temporary tourist attraction and what had to be an amazing photo opportunity. Someone got this picture where you can see the bullet holes as the helicopter is starting its return trip back to the base. We didn't think it would be possible to find enough crazy White House moments to make a whole video, but boy were we proven wrong. We had to leave some stuff out, like the guy who crashed a drone onto the grounds in the first and only White House prom. Hope you enjoyed watching as much as we did making it, and as always, thanks so much for tuning in.
Number 1.
Clinton's savage staff. Apparently, White House staffers have been leaving practical jokes and pranks for their incoming staff following the election of a new president for years. No staff made more news for this little-known tradition than Bill Clinton's following the transition to George W. Bush in 2001. The incoming administration found that keyboard keys, most notably the W, had been removed. Obscene voice messages had been left, and desk drawers had been glued permanently shut. Antique doorknobs and a 12-inch presidential seal were apparently stolen. Reports indicated that the White House was in a state comparable to college freshmen checking out of their dorm rooms, and that damages totaled around $15,000. Wow, who knew a staff working directly under the president could be so savage? Apparently Obama's staff got a memo to abscond from doing anything similar at the end of his second term. Whether everyone obeyed the message or not is unclear.